Louisa. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Real Estate Game Changers show. My name is Mike McKay, your host down in Jacksonville, Florida. If anyone is in the Jacksonville market and wants to reach out for help on anything, feel free to reach out, DM me, hit me up. We are still actively buying in Jacksonville. I know a lot of buyers have pulled back. We have not. In fact, quite the opposite. So if you do have deals you want to sell, go ahead and send me a message. I'll shoot over our buy box. Each and every Friday, we do this show to bring in guests who are changing the game of real estate all over the country. And this is a live show, so please post any comments or questions for our guests to answer. So this week, we have a friend of mine, JR Reed, based in Houston, Texas. JR, welcome to the show, man.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you having me on the show. It's an
Yeah,
honor, man.
absolutely, dude. Well, let's get it started. I know people have seen the headline for this, corporate America to full-time investor, right? So
Yeah.
how did you get started in the real estate business?
So actually, I got started with a buddy of mine that we met in college. We decided we were going to buy rental properties off the MLS together and build a rental portfolio together. And
Okay.
we were both working our jobs. We both went to college together. Both got good jobs out of college. I was doing B2B sales. He was in finance and operations with a Fortune 500 company. And we were both 8 years into our career, and we were like, man, we want to do something other than be in corporate America for the rest of our lives.
Sure.
And so let's try to build a rental portfolio so we can go sit on the beach and drink mai tais and just have passive income come in whenever we want it.
So
Obviously,
you're
that's
not on a,
not what. Go,
I was gonna
go
say I don't
ahead.
see a beach in the background right now, so it seems like
No,
it shifted a little bit.
no, yeah, it shifted a lot. So you get into this and kind of fast forward. We were looking for deals on the MLS, and we couldn't find deals that made sense, like numbers wise. And so we start going to real estate investor meetups. And when we go to real estate investor meetups, we start learning about wholesaling. And I was
Okay.
like, man, this wholesaling thing doesn't sound like a bad deal. It sounds like that's something I could do, and I wouldn't have to be working now for corporate America. I could just kind of do that on my own, and we could find deals for our rental portfolio. And so that's exactly what happened. I got frustrated at work one day. I was working with a startup company, a software company, and I was supposed to get equity in the company. And we were supposed to have this conversation where we were talking about what kind of equity buy-in I was going to have into the company. And they basically sat me down and said, "Hey, you're not going to be able to earn any equity in the company." And so at that point, I was like, "Okay, I'm out. I'm
Yeah.
going to go do this wholesaling thing. I'm going to figure it out, and we'll just go from there." And so by this point, my partner and I had already put money together to go buy a rental portfolio or start building a rental portfolio. And I approached him. I said, "Hey, man, I'm just going to start wholesaling, and so I can find us some properties. And I'm going to quit my job tomorrow." And he was like, "Why don't you just use the money that we have together as like your marketing startup, and whatever deals you get, then you can just pay it back." I was like, "Cool, let's do it."
Sweet. Okay.
So
Had
fast forward 3 years, and now we've got a team of people. We're doing. We should do $2 million pretty easily this year in wholesale fees, and we've got a nice size rental portfolio rocking.
had you guys bought any deals on the MLS before you quit your job? You just went, you
Yeah.
just quit. Okay.
I was like, I was just ready to go. I will say this: we did do two wholesale deals before I quit my job. So
Okay.
I knew a guy who was flipping a bunch of houses in Houston, and I would call him up and I'd be like, "Hey, man, can I come work with you for a day, just kind of see what you're doing?" He was flipping like 12 houses at a time, and he
Wow.
he was he was kind of an asshole, and he'd be like, "No, hell no," and he like hung up on me like several times, and finally one day I called him up and I was like, "Hey, man, I'll come work for you for free for like a week. Let me just come work and see what you do." And he's like, "Well, we're gonna go buy houses at the auction tomorrow, the foreclosure auction. Why don't you come with me? I need help." And so that's how it all started with this guy. bringing me to the
Yeah.
foreclosure auction, and yeah, I ended up wholesaling him a couple deals, and those were our first two deals that we did.
Nice, man. Okay. Did your partner quit corporate America at the same time as you, or how did that work?
Yeah. So when we got into this, we remember we wanted to build a rental portfolio. So
Yep.
our whole goal was I had to have him as some kind of good income to be able to buy rental portfolio or to be able to buy rental properties. And
Yep.
so he actually worked for a year and a half after I started this. And then a year and a half in, he quit his job, and that's when we started building our team.
Gotcha. So you quit your job. I guess you wholesaled this flipper in town,
I
a
did.
couple deals. How'd you get the first one, and how long did it take?
The first four deals we got, we were just going and knocking on doors for foreclosures. So we'd go pull the
Wow.
foreclosure list with the county, and literally would just show up and knock on doors.
Okay. Most people do not start with door knocking, so that's brave. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was wild. So we got a couple deals doing that. It works. We were doing it
Yeah.
all wrong too. Like I would literally show up and knock on somebody's door and be like, "Hey, I know you're in foreclosure. Would you be interested in selling your house?" Don't do that if that's what you're going to do. You should not tell them you know they're in foreclosure.
Do you guys still have some door knocking element of your business today, or
No, not at all.
not at
Um,
all?
so we had too many guns pulled on us while we were doing it, and so we totally got away from doing that.
I guess that's a Texas thing, right?
Yeah, I'll never forget the first gun I got pulled on me was not that big a deal. Like it was I kind of expected it because I went up and I knocked on this guy's house. It was a nice house. Knocked on his door, and I get in my truck to leave because nobody answered. And as I'm pulling away, I see him pulling into his driveway. So I like throw it in reverse, jump out of my truck, and I approach him as he's getting out of his car. And I didn't like run up there or anything, but I walked up and from like 10 feet away said, "Hey, man." And like as soon as I said, "Hey, man," he just kind of pulled the gun out. He didn't point it at me, he just pulled it out. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, okay." I still carried on like the gun didn't even matter. And
Sure.
he was nice about it. And he was like, "No, I'm not interested in selling." And I was like, "Okay, cool. I'll see you later." The second time I got a gun pulled on me, the guy, I went and knocked on the door. The dude told me he's not interested. And so I was like, okay, no problem. And I go get back in my truck and I start getting on my laptop to figure out where I'm going next. And next thing
Uh,
I know, I hear somebody yelling outside of my truck, and the guy's got a shotgun pointed at me through my at my window. And I was like, it was the same guy I just talked to, and I was like, oh, time to go. Put it in drive and just drove off.
oh man, that's wild.
So
Um, so what would you said you wouldn't say what you said before. So
yeah,
as you did it, what did you learn was a better thing to say when knocking a door?
yeah. So whenever you're approaching somebody in a bad situation and you know it's a seller and they're going through foreclosure or probate or any kind of weird situation, we train our people to just act like it's a normal conversation of, hey, would you be interested in selling your property?
Hmm.
And like if you're knocking on doors, you literally knock on their door and say, "Hey, I was talking to your neighbor down the road. We're actually going to buy your neighbor's house down the road. Do you know anybody that would be interested in selling their property in the neighborhood?"
Yep.
And that way, you're not approaching them like, "Hey, do you want to sell yours?" You're just kind of in the neighborhood knocking on every door.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I mean, I've knocked some doors, and that was our strategy. You never ask about their house. You say you probably don't know anyone else in the neighborhood who's thinking about selling. The ones who are will say, "Oh, no, no, I am though." Like, and then you've got
Literally,
a great conversation. So,
for sure.
so you knocked the first four. You said first four were from knocking doors.
First four deals,
Right.
we sold two of them to my buddy. He walked me through the whole process of how to do a wholesale transaction,
Okay.
and then we just kind of took off from there. The next two were just random people we sold them to, and yeah, it was just off to the races.
So back a couple years ago, what was the how many doors did you have to knock to buy a foreclosure house?
That's a good question. I probably a 100 to 150. I would say.
It's not bad.
You don't think so?
The number in Jacksonville is 600.
Wow, 600
Yeah.
doors to knock to buy. Well, I was only knocking on foreclosure houses though.
Okay, these aren't only foreclosures. These
Yeah,
are general. Yeah.
so it was
Wow,
only
157.
foreclosures.
That's not bad. So how long did it take you to get your first deal from, I guess, well, you're still at your job, but I guess when you started working on it, how long did it take you to get that first one?
So we would do this on the weekends. So on
Okay.
Saturday we'd meet up. We'd have the list pulled. We would use some I don't know mapping out um, app where you could plug all the addresses in, and it would figure out the best route to go drive them all.
Yep.
And so we would use that app or that website, and then we would split it up. I'd take half, and my partner would take half. And so we'd do
Gotcha.
that every Saturday and Sunday. And I think the second weekend of doing that, we got a deal.
Holy crap, man.
Yeah. So
And did
we were
you
super lucky.
did you like how'd that work? Like, did you knock the door and walk in and sign it up on the spot, or they invited you to come back, or what
Yeah.
happened?
So man, I'll be honest, my sales background really helped me out with this because I was used
Okay.
to like door knocking from sales for my previous jobs and that kind of thing. So I knocked on the door, this lady's door, and she answered the door and she kind of just pulled it open a little bit to where I could see her face. And she's like, "Can I help you?" And it was like Sunday morning at like 10 a.m. Like I would
Okay.
start early, and I knocked on her door and I said, "Hey, I know you're in foreclosure. I just wanted to see if there's anything I could help you with. I buy houses from people and also help them with foreclosure." And she's like, "Man, you guys are relentless. This is crazy. You're here at 10 a.m." And I was like, "On a Sunday?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm here at 10 a.m. on a Sunday." I was like, "I just got out of church, so I thought I'd come over here right after church." This is a total lie. But and she was like, "Man, okay, well, let me get your number. I am interested in talking to you." And
Okay.
I gave her my number. I didn't think anything was going to come of it, and she called me 2 days later.
Wow. Okay.
So called me up. That lady, I actually, she had lost her job. She was depressed. She lost her job. She had 3 kids, and so she did some kind of HR work.
Hmm.
It was very specific the HR work that she did. And so I said, "Hey, I used to work in HR, and I know a ton of different companies who are hiring right now because I used to sell HR software previous to doing real estate." And
Got it.
so I made like 5 phone calls for her, and ended up getting her an interview with a company at one of their North Carolina branches, and she ended up getting
Huh.
the job. So she
No
was going to
way.
for sure sell to me because I
Wow.
got her a job
That's awesome, man. So you helped her in more than one way. That's great.
for sure.
So you do, you get 4 deals from door knocking. You decide, maybe it's not great for my life expectancy to continue doing this.
Yeah.
Um, what did you decide to do once you came to that realization?
So we came to that realization pretty early on, and Facebook was nobody was really using Facebook at that time to buy deals, and I was watching a lot
Okay.
of Gary Vee videos at the time, and he's like, "You guys are idiots if you're not using Facebook to gain clients. Like you can run an ad on Facebook for basically nothing and gain clients." And like I watched enough videos like that, and I was like, "Man, I should start running ads for like motivated sellers." And
Yeah.
so I started looking things up, and there was only one guy in the industry that was pushing this and teaching people how to do it. And his name was Chris Chico at the time.
Yep. Yeah.
And you're in Florida. I don't know if you know who Chris Chico is, but he's down in Florida.
I know him from the Facebook ads that he was always
Okay.
promoting. I never met the guy, but yeah, I know who he is. Yeah.
Super cool dude. I ended up hitting it off with him, but he offered a course for like $700 on how to do Facebook ads for motivated sellers, and it was insane how well it worked. Like it
Really?
was
And
crazy.
this was when? This was 3 years ago, or this is 2019?
Yeah, so this would have been 2019.
Okay. Wow.
So it was right in the middle of 2019. Nobody was running ads for Facebook at that time. I
Yeah.
was the only guy in Houston doing it,
Wow.
and so I was getting leads for like $10.
It's amazing. Inbound leads.
Wild. Um, so we ended up buying some rental properties doing that. We ended up doing some wholesale deals doing that. I wasn't as good at closing people back then because I came from B2B sales, where
Hmm.
you're very proper. Everything is a very laid out process. But
Sure.
when you're buying houses from people that are distressed or motivated, like you get one shot. You got to show
Yeah.
up and get the contract. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so I wasn't used to that.
Yeah. Talk about that transition, kind of B2B corporate sales job to now, I guess you're doing in-home, in-person appointments, right? One call closes.
Right.
What did you start to, what did you change about your sales process?
So, in business to business sales, when I was selling software to people, I would go meet with different departments and build like a business case of like, here's why you need this, and here's how much money it's going to save you, or here's how much money it's going to make your company.
Hmm.
And you don't do that when you're buying houses from people who are in distress.
Sure.
You still make a business whatever they really need in their life. And
Yeah.
so making that transition from the corporate world where my sales cycle was like 3 months long to
Hmm.
now it's an hour long was
Yeah.
kind of a. It took me a while to get used to it.
Sure. So these are, you're running Facebook ads. Um, was it only distressed people who were reaching out from Facebook ads though, or were you getting a lot of like retail people who just wanted to sell?
Yeah, we got everything at the time. So I was getting retail
Okay.
people who wanted to sell. I was getting people who were motivated that wanted to sell. I was getting people that just wanted to figure out how much their house was worth at the time.
Sure. Yeah.
Those kinds of things. The normal stuff you get in your marketing.
Yeah. So, you're running those Facebook ads for a while, and it's still just you and your partner at this point, or have you started to build a team yet?
So no, we were. It was just me and him at the time. So I
Okay.
was. I had quit my job. I started doing this whole thing of wholesaling. This was late 2019. I quit my job, started doing this wholesaling thing,
Okay.
and you know, the deal flow was okay, but we were only doing like 1 to 2 deals, every other month.
Okay. I got you. Yeah.
So we would get some deals, and I would be focusing on getting as many deals in under contract as I could. And so then I'd get like 3 or 4 deals under contract, and then I'd be like, "Holy crap! I got to sell these deals so I can make some money." So then I'd
Sure.
focus on selling deals, and it was like this whole process of like, okay, now I got to go find more deals. Now I got to go sell more deals, and finally I got into a rhythm of like, okay, I can do both, and where I'm
Yeah.
working on like half a day I'm working on finding deals, and half a day I'm working on selling deals. And
Yeah.
so we finally got to the repetition to where we were doing a couple deals a month. Um, and that's when I told him, hey, man, I think it's time for us to start building a team. And this
Sure.
is like uh, 2020. Let me think. This was like in the beginning of 2020. I was like, we were doing our goals for the year. And I was like, hey, for us to hit the goals that we wanted to hit, we've got to
Hmm.
build a team.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, yeah, I think building a team is the right way to go. And so we ended up hiring somebody like a couple months later who's still with us, Tyler, to help me with acquisitions so I could focus on acquisitions and dispositions.
Yep.
And before we know it, like 2 months later after that, I hire another guy for acquisitions. And then once I had those two guys and got them trained up and they started hitting the ground running a little bit, our business really just kind of took off.
Yeah. So at this time you're hiring people, right? Is Facebook still your only channel where you're sourcing?
No. So
Okay.
Facebook ended up like they changed all their rules
Yeah.
of how you could advertise to people. Like literally, when I was running ads, when I first started, I'll never forget this. I could pick the zip code that I wanted to run the ad to. I could pick how much money that people were making per year that I was running the
Yeah.
ad to, how old they were, like what age range I was running it to, like all the best features that you could ever think of, like as a marketer that you
Yeah.
could pick. It
Yeah.
was insane. Um, so they changed the rules. The government sued them because you could I guess, discriminate running ads on for housing, and so
Sure.
anything that had to do with housing, um, they wouldn't let you use any of those features anymore. And so I
Yeah.
kind of just threw the baby out with the bathwater, and I was like, oh, it's garbage now because you can't use those
Yeah.
features. It's garbage. So we went to cold calling.
Got it. And this was before you hired the guys, or this was as you were hiring them?
This was right before I hired the guys.
Okay. So talk about that. I mean, so we've got a cold calling operation on our end too. It is not like people think, oh, it's simple. You pick up the phone, you call people. It is not an easy thing to run effectively, especially with all the changing stuff around spam and all that. Could you talk about building out that, how you went about building out that cold call operation?
For sure. So we were building it out in conjunction while we were doing Facebook, because we knew
Okay.
that we needed more than one marketing channel. It
Yep.
wasn't good to just rely on Facebook for marketing, even though it was working well. We knew that something could change, and we would need to have another marketing channel. So, and sure enough, something changed with Facebook, and so we needed our cold calling team. But I had done so much cold calling in the past with my other jobs for my career that I was really good at cold calling.
Yeah.
And so it was really easy for me to bring on people in the Philippines and teach them how to cold call the way I cold call. So every morning before we had stopped running Facebook ads, every morning I would spend an hour on the phone or on Zoom with two guys from the Philippines, and we would just train every morning for an hour for like, I think I did that for like 3 months with these two
Wow.
guys, and I
Yeah.
got them really, 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 really good at cold calling.
Yeah.
And they actually, one of them still works for me today. The other guy I ended up having to let go for other reasons, not because he wasn't performing well, just because culture wise he just wasn't a fit anymore.
Yeah. So how many cold callers are you guys up to now, or if you're even still using that as a channel?
Yeah. So we still cold call today. We've grown from two cold callers. Now we have eight cold callers.
Okay.
Only calling in Houston really, and I manage it a little bit, but I probably spend, I would say, an hour to 2 hours every week on managing the cold callers. So
Mhm.
now I've got my team. The one guy that I first hired to cold call with us, he manages the team now, along
Great.
with my VA assistant, who's like my executive assistant. So they manage it together. So they hire, they train, they do the numbers with the team. I mean, they do it all
Yeah, that's awesome. And
for
are
sure.
I know people have different theories with cold calling, right? Some people are, only calling certain, lists. Maybe they're calling 10% of the market. Other guys are like, I'm calling everyone who's owned property for more than 5 years. I don't know how many people are in the Houston market, but what's your approach there?
Yeah. So I'll tell you exactly how we do our cold calling. So we try not to call the unmotivated things. So
Okay.
we will when we don't have enough things to call on. So people who we call owner occupied lists, our owner occupied list in Houston, we call things that are 10 years, they've been owned for 10 years or longer, and they
Okay.
have to be built before a certain year. So we don't call it unless it's been built before 1980.
Because you think it just doesn't need any work if there's no distress signals.
Yeah, they're 1980 is 40 years ago, and so
Mhm.
there's more than likely there's some distress in that house. If they'd
Sure.
owned it more than 10 years, I can almost guarantee you the house is not in great shape.
Yeah.
And Houston's such a huge market. If we called everybody, which I mean, we've gone that approach before in the past where we called everybody. Um, you just call a lot of people that aren't motivated.
Yeah. Is that your sole qualifier? 10 years or more? You don't pull any other data, any other lists or
That's if we're calling owner occupied. We really try to stay away from that owner occupied. So we're
Okay.
calling code violations. We're calling citricato. We're calling tax
What was that one?
default.
What was the second one?
Citricato.
What's that? I've never heard that before.
Oh man, you don't know about citricato?
Yeah, I don't even know what that means.
Oh man, I'll have to get my affiliate code with those guys. No, citricato.
Give it out,
Citricato
man.
is it's great data, man. They so they I don't know if they sell it to everybody. I'm pretty sure they do because Yeah, I'm sure they sell it to everybody. It's spelled CITRACADO.
Okay.
I'll connect you with the guy that I buy all of our leads from. But basically,
Yeah.
what Citricado is everybody that has a mortgage for a certain amount of time and
Hmm.
their credit score has dropped by 100 points within the last 6 months.
Oh man, what am I doing? I don't have this list. What? That
So
sounds
it's
like
like
a great list, man.
the
Citricado.
pre foreclosure list.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what it
Something's
is.
going on. Yeah.
So pre foreclosure list. So we do that. Um, Citricado. It's pretty affordable too, so I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
What else do we call them? So code violations, Citricado. We call all the normal stuff too. So your probates, your foreclosures, your tax default, your divorces,
Hmm.
airship. We do something in Texas where you can file for airship. I don't think a lot of people call that list. So where they file only for airship, it's not for probate. It's like they file saying that hey, there's no will. I'm an heir of this property, which is actually different than probate.
Oh yeah, that's a Texas thing, right?
I guess so. I don't know.
Okay.
Not a lot of people call that list. That's a good list here in Texas.
Hmm.
We call the loan modification list. So
Huh.
we go pull a list of everybody that went through a loan modification 6 months ago.
They've completed it.
Yeah, they went through the loan mod process 6 months ago, and that's a great list.
Where do
Uh,
you get that from? Is that
Man, you got to go dig in county lists. Like we dig the heck
okay?
out of county lists. So
That's
we pull that, and man, that's a pretty fire list. I'm not gonna lie.
oh, I bet. Yeah.
It's not called on nearly as much.
Yeah.
So
Dude, I
ho-
just took some notes.
hopefully the three people that are watching right now they don't tell all their friends.
Well, they're all Houston people, so you're
They're
screwed
all
now.
great, great.
Thomas Heil's on here watching, taking notes.
Son of a gun. Thomas is on here watching now.
Yeah.
What's Michael's last name? Michael Finkelstein.
Yeah,
You know Mike?
Finkelstein, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I know Mike. Yeah. Oh man. So you
that's
call
great.
those, and then do you guys do any kind of just like general absentee stuff or anything like that, or you just try to stay
No, we
away
don't
from
even. I don't even mess with those anymore, man. The absentee owners list in Houston is so beat up. It's just like not even. I don't even mess
it?
with it. I
Really?
mean, we'll call it sometimes if we're like really needing something to call and we've gone and burned through all of our data, but
Yeah.
I don't like that list.
Yeah. What? And so you said you had a specific way you've trained these guys to call
Yeah.
that you kind of learned from your sales career. How are you training them that's kind of different than maybe everyone else's?
Um, so you and I were in Steve Trang's coaching program together, and that's
Yep.
how we met and mastermind together. I take his script and then I kind of put in my own twist of things.
Hmm.
And so we use his script for cold calling. Um, Man, we practice our our role playing with the cold callers twice a week, and then we also listen to their calls with the whole team together, and then everybody on the whole team has to give them feedback. So
Okay.
I just pull random calls, and then the whole cold calling team listens to them together. And man, we just we train with them 3 days a week on that stuff, and that's really our basis for training them. As far as my own script, I don't know how to describe it without. I mean, it's just a mix of Steve Trang and then a little bit of Jr. I guess.
What's the JR flair that you
the
add?
Jr. Flair is man. I really tell them that when you go and you visit a restaurant, when you walk in to talk to the hostess and the first person that greets you at the restaurant,
Hmm.
that's when your experience at the restaurant begins. Is when that first person greets you, and so
Yep.
we really focus on having a great experience up front with our
Okay.
with our clients. I also really highly encourage my cold callers to make people laugh.
Mm.
When your cold callers, I don't know if you get cold called for any of like the properties you own. but when I get called for some of my like my house, I get cold called on it all the time. They're like robots when they call me. It's like somebody in
Yeah.
the Philippines, and they're like the worst cold call I've ever had in my entire life.
Yeah.
And so my goal is like when my guys call people, I want them to be fun, sarcastic with the people, having a good time, and yeah. So that's what we do. We focus on like trying to have really good conversations with people.
Yeah, not super rigid. Just seems like they're reading off a script. Yeah.
We don't ask about the other thing is we never ask about the condition of the property.
Oh, it's pointless. What's the point?
Everybody asks about the condition of the property, so I tell them you're not allowed to ask about condition of the property.
Yeah. It's irrelevant on a cold call. I mean, you're not even
There's,
there.
there's no reason.
Yeah. So kind of back to where you were before. So you start hiring, you hire your first acquisitions guy. A couple months later, you hire another. What does your business look like at this point in terms of deal flow and just how everything is structured?
So on a monthly basis, we're usually closing anywhere from uh, 8 deals a month to like 14 deals a month. I'd say we're usually around that 10 to 12 number most of the
Yeah.
time. So those are our wholesale closes that we're doing per month. And then we do some hotels.
Okay.
So we usually have like 2 or 3 hotels going on at the same time. We're trying not to have too many of those with the way that the market is right now. So we're really slowed up on those.
Hmm.
Um, as far as our team goes, we've got a team we've got 3 people in acquisitions. So
Okay.
myself, um, another acquisitions manager, and a lead manager. We just
Okay.
hired our second lead manager. So we just hired our second lead manager. She started 2 days ago, so it's too early to really call her anything other than a trainee.
Hmm.
And then we've got a dispo manager,
Okay.
and then we've got a TC, our transaction coordinator.
In-house. Okay.
Everything in house, yeah.
And everyone's in-house, like in the US,
Every,
besides the cold calling team.
correct. So everybody's in our office in Houston, like right north of downtown Houston.
Got it. So part of the thing where a lot of people struggle, and I know like as you know, I was scaling the business too, and I don't think I'm 100% through it yet, is you go from you can be like the solo guy out there crushing it, right? Just hammering the phones, basically putting in the work. But then you got to scale and you got to train salespeople and you got to have people take over doing things you're doing. Like, can you talk about how you accomplish that? Because it is not easy to do that effectively.
Man, to this day, I'm still jumping in and out of sales. Like to this day, I'm still our best sales guy. I'm still our best closer.
Yeah.
Um, that now because I'm trying to scale, I step out of it as much as I can.
Okay.
Me personally, I'm only closing probably 2 to 5 deals myself a month,
Okay. Yeah.
and I'm only trying to focus on developing my team. And so, do our numbers hurt because of that sometimes? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Because if it was me in there taking the call or taking the lead, my closing ratio is going to be always be better than those guys.
Yeah.
But that said, at some point you've got to move yourself out of there and you've got to
Yeah.
train them on how to be leaders within that group and how to develop them so they can start making money and that sort of thing. And so that's what I mainly focus on is that.
And are you guys closing on the phone or in person?
We do both.
You do both. Okay.
Yeah, I would say we're probably 70% in person and 30% on the
Okay.
phone.
Is it the preference to go to in person if they live in Houston, or is it
Yeah.
something else? Okay.
So no, yeah. So we try to go and get in front of people if we can. We buy a lot of houses from elderly people, like a whole lot of houses from elderly people, and
Yeah.
so not that you can't walk elderly people through DocuSign because we do it all the time.
Yeah.
Um, some people just feel a lot better about sitting across from you, you hearing their
Mhm.
stories, they can see you, that sort of thing.
So how do you make that determination if you're gonna close try to go for it on the phone um, or go out for an in person?
It depends on the situation. So, my guys, we don't go out to any appointment unless we go through what I call our pre-meeting checklist. And
Okay.
so our pre-meeting checklist is they're within 10% of our range. They've
Oh, so
all,
you are given a range on the phone.
oh yeah, oh yeah, for
Okay.
sure. So we give a range before yeah, I mean, we give a range like, you call in and you come in and you're getting a range,
Yeah.
which is just part of it. So they've got to be within 10% of the range. They've got to have all the decision makers on board with selling, or have all the decision makers present at the time that
Okay.
we're going to meet.
Sure.
And then the third thing is we ask them, okay, when we come out and visit with you tomorrow and see the property, is there anything that you can think of that would stop you from moving forward with us and putting everything in writing?
Hmm.
And so we just straight up ask them that.
Yep.
And if they say anything other than that, then we handle the objection then, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. But we are
Yeah.
not allowed to go meet with anybody unless they check all those boxes.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll run around all day with people who aren't serious.
Yeah, I mean, in Houston, you can drive an hour each way very easily,
Yeah.
and if there's traffic, it's 2 hours
Right. Yeah. You can only knock out so many of those appointments a day.
for sure.
Um, so what have you done on like you're kind of in the role. I mean, you're still a little bit in acquisitions, but you're really kind of trying to elevate yourself to the level of sales manager,
Sure.
which is actually something I'm in the process of trying to do right now. What have you found to be effective to coach your guys to get them to the next level and to increase performance?
Man, I'll tell you this: you've got to hire with batteries included. And
Hmm.
so what that means is you've got to hire people who are very motivated and who have a desire to want to grow. And so my guys are up here, not to brag on them too much, but like I'll come up to work on Saturday to knock something out. I'll come up to the office and they're here working. They don't have to
Yeah.
be; they're just here. And so they're super dedicated. They're all trying to gain wealth in their life, and that's part of our comp plan. Is we give them houses as they progress. So after they've worked here for a year, they can start earning houses.
How does that work? How do you structure that?
Yeah, so we structure it by, you have to work here for a year.
Yep.
So after you've worked here for a year, after so many closes and after hitting your revenue numbers and hitting certain gates, then you get to, you know, choose a house that you want to keep. And
Okay.
you only have to pay up what we call like a marketing fee to the company, which is just a 5K assignment to the company, so we can pay the bills. But
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, that way they're building their wealth, and they're able to build their own rental portfolio. The kicker is we manage it for them. So we manage the rehab for them. We manage the everything, the tenant. We get them the money for it. I mean, we do the whole thing for them.
Yeah, so they just focus on closing deals, and in the
Yep.
background, as long as they're hitting their numbers, they can get some houses that are basically turnkey because you guys are doing
100%
everything.
turnkey. Like they don't
Yeah,
even know the tenants. Like I've got guys who work with us and they have no clue who the tenants are, and they own
yeah.
these houses, and yeah.
So what is your rental portfolio look like right now?
Man, we are pushing 30 single family houses. We're about to hit our 30th single family house here in Houston.
Gotcha.
So it's not like huge by any means, but it's sizable enough over 3 years that I feel good about it.
Yeah, man. And are you buying from other wholesalers as well, or you're really just these are your own deals and you're just kind of
Yeah, these
cherry
are
picking?
all of our own deals.
Okay.
I will buy from other wholesalers. I 100% will. But
Yeah.
usually, when other wholesalers send me their deals, and if I'm usually like JVing it or whatever, it's rare that I find one that I'm like, ooh, I really want to keep this.
Sure, sure. And do you have like specific criteria that you look for in your rental properties?
Yeah, so we look for a property where we can go in and completely redo everything. So
Okay,
we want to really go in and do all the mechanicals in it. So we're doing the plumbing, the electrical, the AC, the roof. I mean, we want to do all the mechanicals. We want to redo everything in the house. So whenever we lease it out, we don't have to worry about anything.
yeah. So you are looking for gut jobs, basically.
Yeah, literally.
Interesting.
Like
Okay.
I think that all the rehabs we did this year, I don't think on all the rehabs we did for our real properties, I don't think we had one that was less than 40,000.
Wow. Okay. And you said you manage the construction. Can you talk about how you run that process?
I don't manage it.
Okay.
Andrew, my partner, he manages that side of it. So I focus on revenue generation, marketing, and making messes in the company, and then he
Okay.
focuses on the operation side. So
Yeah,
the transaction coordination, the dispo, and our finances and construction management.
got it. Are you still doing the dispositions on the sales side, or is that his focus? No.
That's his. I took it off. He took it off my plate because I basically came to him and I was like, hey man, um, he was really just managing finances and construction and kind of helping out in a couple different areas. This
Yeah.
was, I think this was at the beginning of this year, and because we had a lot of rehabs going on and we had some hotels going on, he was managing all that stuff, and so we
You have
slowed
some
down on
hotels going on, you said?
no hotels.
Hotel, I say your
Yeah,
hotels. I was like,
flips,
what?
flips. We had a lot
Got
of
it.
flips going on at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey man, I need you to start helping out. If we're going to keep growing this thing, I need you to start helping out on the dispo side and the transaction side. And he kind of came to me too, and he's like, hey, you need help on this. Like,
Yeah.
let me
Yeah.
help you out. Because I was like doing a little bit of everything all at one time, and I'm not the most organized guy. I'm good at going and getting deals and
Yeah.
bringing deals in and doing marketing, but organization and processes and things like that, it's not my strength. And
Yeah.
so he came in and he said, this is what we're going to do. And as soon as he took those things over, man, we have like really just taken off.
So, dispositions has become more and more important, at least in Florida in the last
Yeah.
few months. I mean, you used to be able to put out anything and sell it, right, at asking or above.
Yeah.
Like what is everyone's got a different approach to dispositions. I'm curious what your guys' approach is.
So Tyler is our dispositions manager. He was our first hire for our team.
Okay.
He started off in acquisitions, so he understands the full gamut of it. He did acquisitions for a whole year, and then we moved him over to dispositions. So we've been super lucky with him because he is like a master networker. And so
Okay.
he goes to a couple networking events every month or every week, two a week actually. And he has built an enormous buyers list. I would say we probably have one of the best buyers lists, if not the best, in Houston, just
Wow.
because he goes and networks with other big time wholesalers, and then he'll be like, "Hey, let me trade you your buyers list for our buyers list."
Yeah.
And so he's done that with every big wholesaler in Houston. And so from doing that, he's just gotten very good at the dispo process. He's really built that out for us, and we push everything out to everybody. We don't. It's rare that we're like, hey, you know, we'll send it to one of our VIP buyers. It's pretty rare that we just send it to a VIP buyer because we have to maximize everything that we get.
Sure. So property comes in, you what, email blast it out? Is that kind of the
Email
strategy?
blast. We also use Investor Lift too.
Okay.
So we'll email blast, we'll use Investor Lift, and between those two things, and then we'll do like a showing. So we'll do the showing, and then between the showing and the email blast and Investor Lift, I mean, we sell. I mean, it's rare that we have a problem moving something. It's very rare.
So are you guys qualifying people for a showing? If a huge buyer's list, it could be absolute chaos, right? If you,
He qualifies the heck out of people. Like
yeah,
you're not coming unless he knows you or unless you've sent over proof of funds and you've sent over 3 of the last deals that you've done.
Yeah.
So he qualifies the heck out of people.
Do you guys run into issues in Houston where a lot you've got a big buyers list and a lot of people are just kind of daisy chain your deal, and how do you guys avoid that stuff?
Yeah, all the time. We run into that all the time. We ran into it. I almost sued a guy over it. To tell you the truth,
Oh,
I got so upset about it one day. Um, man, we are really good about understanding who is on our buyers list, and we have removed a ton of people from it. But we watermark all of our pictures,
got it.
so that really eliminates 99% of your daisy chaining. Now you are still going to have some people who are going to say that they're going to buy it and then they're going to go sell it to somebody, which is fine, as long as they close the deal and they deposit earnest money. I don't really care.
Right, right.
They make it happen. It doesn't get messy. Whatever. We have people who have approached us who say, "Hey, you know, I'm going to present this to my client. I've got a buyer that wants to buy this. I'm going to personally put down the earnest money, and then they're going to give me earnest money. Are y'all okay with that?" And, yeah, sure. As long as you put down the earnest money, we're cool.
Yeah, yeah. They got to have some skin in the game.
100%. But yeah, man, watermarking your pictures will weed out 99% of that.
Yeah. And have you guys made any other major shifts in dispositions in the last, call it 5 months as things have been changing?
Yeah, so we were selling a lot to hedge funds to at the middle of the year, and man, we were doing great. We had some really great hedge fund buyers at one time,
Yeah.
and now the hedge funds have changed their buy box to where it makes way more sense to sell it to mom and pop investors.
Yeah.
And so the majority of the sales that we have right now are going to mom and pop investors.
Yeah. Yeah, we've run into the same thing here. They are not competitive. I got an offer from a hedge fund about 2 months ago. I was like, I would pay more than that, and I'm pretty cheap. Like,
Literally. We
and
haven't sold a deal.
significantly more. It was like I would pay 30 grand more, and that's
Literally, man. We
a
haven't
lot.
sold a deal to a hedge fund in 3 months, probably
Yeah.
4 months.
And how are you guys for your own rental portfolio? I mean, interest rates, I mean, are getting pretty high, and on DSCR loans, we're talking close to
Yeah.
8. How are
No,
you
bro.
guys?
Nine, nine,
You're at
nine
9
percent.
now? Oh man, I
Nine.
just did one at 7.6, so that was about 2 months ago. So
That's a great rate.
yeah,
Great rate.
I got some guys at 7.75 right now if you need someone.
Really? Send them over,
Yeah,
please. I'd love to talk to them.
yeah,
Local banks. We're talking to local banks now. We were doing a lot of, DSCR loans, and we're doing DSCR loans through local banks now. And
okay.
they're keeping the it's 5 year, it's 30-year AM with 5 year balloons.
Oh, it's a balloon. Okay,
5 year
interesting.
balloons. So you've got to refinance in 5 years.
And then what kind of rate are you getting on those compared to the
If I told you,
DSCRs?
I'd be lying, honestly. I know that when we were talking about it a week ago, we were talking to somebody in the mid sevens,
Hmm.
but it's changing. I feel like daily. Like the DSCR loans we were getting quoted on were 8.5% on from like mortgage brokers.
Yeah, yeah. And how did you find these local banks? I mean, you just approaching everyone, or are you looking at who's done it in the past for single family, or what do you?
Referrals from buddies here in Houston. So we've got a really good network of people in Houston. I think that's honestly been a lot of our growth in our business has been our network. We've got a mastermind that we're part of here in Houston that it's 10 of the guys and gals who do a lot of volume in Houston. We all get together once a month and just share ideas and secrets, basically.
Yeah.
Um, but we've gotten referrals from that group.
Okay, I got you.
It also helps my partner. So he worked for a Fortune 500 company. It was a publicly traded company. He was in the finance department doing all their quarterly reporting and annual reports and that kind of thing. And
Hmm.
so he speaks the language. And so when we go and apply for financing places, Like he puts together a pitch deck and puts together the all the financials and knows how to make it just sound really amazing.
Yeah. And I guess, what other changes have you made in any part of your business? I know you obviously are wholesaling and flipping a little bit less with
Yeah.
changes. But what else have you changed in the last 5, 6 months?
Yeah, we really pulled back on hotels. We were doing a lot at one time, so it wouldn't be any big deal for us to have like six of them going, seven of them
Okay.
going at one time. Now, like I said, I think we're at two or three right now. Um, I think that's been a big pullback. We're changing how we're pricing out and acquiring too. So, like we
Sure.
used to be, you know, in Houston, we were 80% minus cost and repairs and that kind of thing, minus your fee. Now depending on the neighborhood, we're at like 72%, 70%.
That's what you're selling them at.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So 70% minus your repairs, minus your fee, that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
So now that's how we're acquiring them. Now that's subject to the neighborhood. It's very
Sure.
neighborhood by neighborhood. There's still some neighborhoods, I can do 80% all day and
Yeah.
get a buyer on it. But there's a lot of neighborhoods that, buyers are way pickier than they were 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Way pickier. The other thing, we do a lot of lots. We wholesale a lot of lots here in Houston, and the guys who buy the lots, it's gotten tougher to sell those. I guess they're not
Interesting.
developing much anymore.
Right. What were they doing before? Were they doing build to sell or build to rent? Or
Yeah, I mean, we were selling to everything. We were doing no, it's book build to sell. Almost
build to sell?
99% of it were build to sell in Houston. There's not a lot of build to rent in Houston, but it's all infill lots, so just
Hmm.
random lots. And it used to be super easy, like you could sell a lot like that. Now it's getting to be a little bit tougher on selling the lots. Um, we've been doing something we've been doing something in Houston where if it's a lot or a piece of land and we're wholesaling it, we list it on the market. So we'll get permission from the seller to list it on the market.
Only for lots and land, though.
Only for lots of land, or if it's a vacant house, we're usually doing like a novation, and we'll try to do a novation to where we can list the property. But if it has to be vacant.
Got it, because you don't want to deal with the coordination aspect. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, it's just too
and
much.
yeah, we just did our first one of those. We have in contract now. I'm curious, what's your approach from a sales perspective to a seller? I know what we do, and the seller's actually really happy with it, but I'm just curious how everyone else is pitching it.
Yeah, so we give them the offer, the wholesale offer first, and
Uh-huh.
so they understand what the wholesale offer is. If that doesn't work for them, we say, hey, here we offer a full service concierge sale, and that's where
Mm.
we push it out to our investor list, and we push it out to the world basically of investors and all kinds of people who would be interested in buying a property in this condition. Um, and we guarantee you that you're going to receive this amount of funds and you don't have to worry about closing costs or anything like that or showing the property or anything. We handle the whole thing for you. And a lot of people are really into that.
Yeah. And then are you also, if there's inspection repair requests, you guys are handling that as well, or
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So, I mean, usually we tell people, like, we put it in the listing for the ones that we've done as is.
sure.
It is what it is. It's coming as is.
Yeah. And then are you guys
But
doing the whole A to C contract thing, or you're doing the just double
no, we just
closing it?
no. It's the A to C. So it's the novation. So it replaces. So we have our purchase agreement in place with them plus a novation agreement. We always try to get the power of attorney so we don't have to have the seller sign.
Oh, to sign the
So
closing docs. You
right.
do.
So we
Well,
sign for
okay.
them
Yeah.
if we can. It depends on the seller. Some sellers, look, we're doing it
Sure.
with an attorney right now, and he basically told us to go pound sand when we told him about the power of attorney.
Well, most attorneys don't want to sign a power of attorney. I mean,
No,
they like,
but hey, that just goes to show you, even an attorney, we're doing it even with an attorney, right? So
right,
like, it's a legit process. If you can get an attorney to do it, you can get anybody to do
absolutely. And what percentage of your deals are you think are going that route versus traditional
it.
casuals?
A heavier amount now are going that route because it's tough to get people down to a wholesale value when the market was so crazy, and we know where our buyers are right now as far as like investors go, and so when we can't make up that gap, we're just going to, like, we just go and defer to the novation.
Yeah. And just for the people who are maybe newer on here, I mean, I know we both know what innovation is, but could you just give a really 30-second overview of what innovation is and why someone would ever do that?
Yeah. So a novation is, I had to explain this to the attorney. He knew what a novation was, but he asked me the question, what's the difference between me using you and me using a broker to do this?
Hmm.
And so basically what a novation is where you put a purchase agreement in place, and then you have a novation agreement, which just basically says, I'm going to sell this property, and anything that I have, any profit that is over and above what we are contracted for, I get to keep. But
Yep.
I'm also going to take care of all the closing costs. I'm also going to take care of all the title cost, everything that's involved with the transaction. I'm going to handle that. And I'm going to put this property out to market, and I'm going to market it to the world. Now I sell everybody on the idea that we have a huge buyers list and have a
Sure.
lot of investors that want to buy from us.
Hmm.
But we put it on the MLS, and 95% of the time, it's the buyers coming from the MLS.
Sure. Yeah. And usually the case when you use that is just when it's too tight on a traditional wholesale deal.
Yep,
So you need to get it out to more people. Is that
yep.
essentially the
That,
yeah,
that's essentially it. And then we're making, you know, because we're using it that way, our fees are not as big on that. So
sure.
it's like anywhere from 10K to 30K. But
Yeah. Hey, I mean, was nothing before, so
right, it was, you had no deal,
right.
and you're being honest about everything, right? You're not like lying that you're buying the property and you're going to flip it or anything like that. You're just being totally upfront, like, hey, we're going to put this out to other buyers and we're going to find a buyer for you.
Yeah. And in your traditional wholesale process, are you just doing one, you're just doing one showing for
Usually, yeah,
usually? Wow, you guys have that strong of a buyers list, you're able to do that.
for sure. Man, I'll tell you, I'd say 40% of what we sell is sight unseen.
Still, wow.
Yeah, because you've got if you've got good buyers that trust you and they bought from you before in the past. We also do walkthrough videos in all of our properties. So whenever I'm taking a picture, I get done taking pictures of the property, I'll tell the seller, hey, I got to do like 2 walkthrough videos of the house. And so I walk through the house with my camera really slow, and I look at everything and I show every bit of like what's wrong with the house.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So they know, like, okay, this is what I'm looking at.
Yeah. Um, yeah, we sell a lot of stuff sight unseen too, but you're not many people do it. So I was just shocked to hear that someone else was able to do that. But it's really for at least for us, it's been just a trust that we have with people who buy
For
from us a
sure.
lot. I just will tell them like, hey, look, subfloor's shot in this area. You can't see it in the photos. And they're like, wait, who says that? I'm like, well, someone who wants you to buy sight unseen, so I don't have to set up a showing. Like, so
Literally.
I'm not going to screw you
Literally.
once I want to have this relationship to me. So
For sure. We always say we plan on being on this in this business forever, and so
yep,
we want people to think highly of us.
yeah. Um, well, I know you're. I know we're running out of time here. I know you got to jump.
For
Um,
sure.
so what? I guess we'll jump to kind of the
You want
questions
to go
I
to your
always like
normal
to.
questions?
Yeah.
All right.
Got to end with the final questions, unless anyone in the chat who's watching live wants to throw something in there. Um, but first question I always like to ask, always a fun one. What is the craziest or most uncomfortable situation you've ever experienced with a seller?
Hmm. I've experienced some pretty crazy situations. I think the craziest as a company that we've had actually wasn't me that experienced the craziest thing. So
Okay.
it's one of my acquisition reps. He went out to meet this guy. It was, over the phone. He did the pre-checklist. The checklist was good. He gets there, and the guy is kind of drunk a little bit, and looks like he was high on, some type of methamphetamine.
Okay.
And my guy's there, and he's talking to him, and the seller's like showing him everything in the house and being real loud and um, rambunctious, he said. And the craziest part of the situation was, you know, my guy started feeling real uncomfortable because the guy ended up pulling out a gun and just
Yeah.
leaving it on the kitchen table, and was pounding all kinds of alcohol while he was there. And my guy was like, okay, well, at this point, he's forgetting about the cell. He doesn't even care. He's like, I need to
Yeah.
get out of here. This guy's high on drugs and alcohol and pulling guns out. And so he's like, all right, well, I'm going to take off, man. I'll see you later. And the guy basically walks over to the front door when my acquisition manager walks to the front door and puts his hand on the front door and is like, no, man, why don't you hang out for a little bit longer? And wanted him to stay and hang out and drink with him. And so he calls me up because he's like, I got to go use the restroom. He calls me up and he's like, hey, man, I've never gotten into a situation like this, but I'm super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And this guy, he's high on drugs. He's definitely drunk. He's got a gun out, and I'm just super uncomfortable. I was like, dude, get out of there. He's like, I'm trying to, but he's, making me stay because he's not letting me leave. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
what are you going to do? And he's like, man, he's like, and when I get out of the restroom, I'm going to tell him I hear some kind of weird noise in the back room. And he's like, and then I'm just going to bolt out the front door. And I
Yeah.
was like, you think that's a good idea? And he's like, that's my only option. And so I was like,
Yeah.
okay, let me know how it goes. And so sure enough, he used the restroom. He flushes the toilet. He walks, as he's walking out of the restroom, he like yells at the guy. He's like, hey, man, like, dude, what do you have going on in this back bedroom back here? And the guy's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you got something going on? And what's this noise, man? It sounds weird. And so the guy like grabs his gun, what my acquisition manager said, grabs his gun, walks back there and goes back to the back bedroom. And supposedly it was a pretty long walk. And as soon as he passed that way, he said he just bolted for the front door and took
Wow.
off and jumped in his car and drove off.
Okay, that's
So
a crazy one.
that's
I
probably
don't
the
care.
scariest story.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to think of like the craziest thing I've seen. I don't know, man. I've seen some fun situations. I had a seller tell me one time when I was there that Open Door had offered her 200,000, and then they knocked it down to 155,000. And
Okay.
I was like, oh, okay. And she was so mad about it that she couldn't believe that they would, offer her that at the beginning and then rope her in with a super low offer at the end.
Sure.
And so she was so pissed off about it. She couldn't believe that they did that. And I needed to buy it at 130. And so that was the max offer I could allow. Like I could buy it at. And so she was like telling me how upset she was about it. And I'm sitting there thinking like, this lady's never going to sell this property to me. And so she's like, okay, so we get down to it. And she's like, what's your offer? And I was like, don't get mad at me, but the most I can offer you is 130. And she's like, well, do you promise you're going to close at for 130? And I was like, yeah, I promise I'll close at 130. And she's like, I'll sell it to you for 130. And I was like, what? And she was
Yeah.
like, yeah, if you promise not to price drop me, then I'll sell it to you. That was probably one of the most like, what? I
Yeah.
can't believe this just happened.
Some people want just someone who's going to be a straight shooter with them, right? They appreciate that and they'll take less because they know they're not going to get jerked around.
Literally. And so that was probably one of the craziest stories I had where somebody was like, yeah, I'll take 25K less.
Yeah. That's wild, man.
It was wild.
Not as scary as the first situation, but
I didn't have to live through that situation. I was scared. Like, I was like, man, he works for me. I hope he doesn't get killed in this. This would be terrible. I'd feel awful.
yeah.
Yeah, he was good.
Well, he ended up all right. Cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, the last one I always like to ask is, if you could go back in time, give yourself one piece of advice when you were looking for your first deal, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
Man, so I would say if it's somebody getting their first deal, it's tough. And when you start off in this business, just know it's not easy. There was a lot of sleepless nights for me. I came from making a really good income in coming into this, and there was a lot of times, um, you start questioning yourself and what you're doing. Like, man, I can't believe I'm trying to buy properties at half price and trying to just sell them to somebody else. And am I even doing something that's right? And why should I be doing this? If you start having that negative like cycle of questioning of yourself, you've got to get yourself out of that immediately, because that's when you start giving yourself doubt and feeding yourself with things that you shouldn't be feeding your mind. And so
Yeah,
whenever that would happen to me and I would have kind of doubt or a bad situation comes up and I feel some negative thought coming in, I would immediately just tell myself, I don't have any other option. I have to make this work. There's
yeah,
literally nothing else I can do. I have to make this work. So I'm going to do whatever the heck it takes to make this work.
yeah,
And so that's literally what it was. And so I would just tell myself, there's no other option. It's either this or I'm not going to be able to pay for anything or be able to live or take care of myself.
yeah. It's good advice because this business can be tough,
It's super tough.
real tough. We laugh about it, but it's true.
Business is like, there's way easier ways to make money. So if you're looking
Yeah,
to come wholesale to make money, I can tell you 20 other businesses that you can make money way easier.
yeah. Well, cool, man. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks for sharing all the insights. Oh, it looks like we may have. Oh, I thought we had a comment coming in from someone.
It's
But yeah,
probably
man,
my
thanks for
son.
joining.
Sorry.